Sanjay. Sanjay.
Hello.
Hey.
Yes, I'm here.
That's excellent.
So you busy?
You got him in for a podcast? Maybe 60?
I can talk for a few minutes, sure.
A few minutes, okay. Well, a few if it's in the double digits, that's great. Higher double digits.
This is without liquid assistance, though.
Yeah. So this, by the way, I think is podcast 28 or 29.
It's podcast 3 in season 2.
Is that right? Podcast 3 in season 2, otherwise 28 or 29. So, Sanjay, we thought the topic would be, you've observed these, you've not participated in them, I'm sure, but failures in business deals and dealings. Completely off the cuff because we're calling you with no notice, but we thought you might be able to help us on that topic. What do you say?
Failed business deals.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of doing business. Not all the deals go 100% okay. I mean, even, baseball players have, batting averages. I mean, so I guess if the probability is not 1.0, it is less than 1, and then the difference is, I guess, they call failed business deals.
Hey, we should probably introduce you properly now that we've got you going.
Because
Mark.
has he been in this series?
No,
we all did the prior series, the Tech Entrepreneur series.
Yeah, but
available
Sanjay,
on iTunes.
Yeah. Sanjay has not been on. Sanjay MANANDHAR has not been on this series at all. So Sanjay, can you properly introduce yourself?
Since we failed to do it.
Since we didn't do that.
Well, I'm a local entrepreneur. I've had a few ventures. The last one was called Erva, and what Erva provided was a cloud-based mechanism for folks to manage content on digital screens remotely. And I ran it for about 10 years, didn't take any outside capital, grew the team. We had, give or take, about 10,000 endpoints. By endpoints, I mean screens, and as far away as airports in New Zealand to several thousand cooler doors for Anheuser-Busch, about 30 or so naval bases for employee communication, convention centers.
Aren't we sitting near? Aren't we sitting near one of your deployments? Because we're downtown.
We're
downtown at the seaport.
Well, if you look out the window, I think you'll see the big LED screen from the Boston Convention Center that is run by Erva, and about 80 or so LCDs inside that is also run by Erva, and of course the customer manages it, and in their particular case, it is what we call a hybrid model. They have content that is nice to know, nice to see, like where should I be for this next conference or next meeting for the viewers, to advertising. And that's like hybrid, in that some content make money for the Boston Convention Center, other content is just very beneficial for the viewers. So you're very, very close to that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me sum that up, because I got to say that the connection we have with you is great, but because it's over the phone, it's a little muffled. People can read about your prior business at Aerva, AERVA.com. And what web address can they read about you so we can get into the fun stuff? Do you have
people can just go to SANJAY.com. There's a lot of information, including a fairly in-depth video that MIT ILP Industrial Liaison Program did when I was running Erva. Just to be clear, I'm not with Erva anymore. There's I guess a typical progression for founders after they sell and they run the company for a little bit, and then other challenges become more interesting, and we move on. I have moved on, and but that was the last venture that I ran.
Okay, so we'll put a link in the program notes. So let's go back to failure in business. So you're saying that. Oh, and by the way, I should point out, Mark, that we are ourselves recovering from a
failure.
From a failure.
Which again, I always say this podcast is called Failure, but it's really about resilience and learning from things that kind of happen. So,
like, we thought we had a guest today, and indeed we do.
Yeah, so we failed in our own damn podcast. We had a previously scheduled guest
who accepted the invite, but unfortunately we were all looking at a different invite.
So we failed at having a proper. First of all, we didn't properly schedule you, Sanjay. So on behalf of really nobody but me, I'm very sorry, and you're a good sport to get yanked into this without any notice.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We don't want you to think like that you're the second, number two. It just turns out you were, but but we're pivoting, if you will, for at least today. So let's talk about
resilience.
Okay, so
resilience. The podcast was taken.
Hey, so I get to ask Sanjay my favorite question before he dives into his. Before Sanjay dives into talking about failure in business,
okay,
I want to ask him a philosophical question, and with his, I'm going to promote him a little, with his MIT and, how do you pronounce it, NSAID? No, NSAID, that's...
INSEAD.
NSAIDs and INSEAD are different, I gather.
I think so.
Are NSAIDs and INSEAD different, Sanjay?
As you know, it's a French business school, so they do call it INSEAD.
Sounds like NSAIDs, and it has the same anti-inflammatory effect. But okay, we got him. I think he was laughing.
Isn't French business school an oxymoron?
I won't even go there.
Okay. Anyway, Sanjay,
this is the same country that wanted to prevent people using their BlackBerries and their iPhones after 5 and on holidays because they didn't want people to be productive, isn't it?
Well, they were also the country that was smart enough to keep McDonald's out until they upped their game.
That's right. Actually, they're not failing. They're probably pretty smart.
Yeah, and didn't that guy? Okay, we won't get into politics. This whole political thing. So let's go. I want to ask Sanjay my philosophical question, which is
if you're out of money question.
No, that's a very
does something fail just because it runs out of money?
No, no, Sanjay. The bigger question is why? So the dinosaurs, I guess, or as a matter of evolution. Species need to fail, or at least go extinct. I guess.
Like
this podcast. They seem to. So is failure a natural part of the business cycle? Not necessarily for any given business, though that would be true too. But the overall evolution of the business ecosystem. Why is failure so essential and unavoidable?
Thinning the herd.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see what Sanjay, with his incredible background, has to tell us about that.
Well, I spent the first 2 years of my coming to the U.S. in New Mexico, and we used to see forest fires. And again, nowadays we see forest fires everywhere out west. And coming from Nepal, we had a lot of forest fires as well. In a way, forest fires are devastating, right? I mean, you have all this, inferno, everything dies. But in a way, it is important for that inferno because what comes up is just very, very healthy. I feel just like in nature, in business, you absolutely need, failure and destruction because from that will come different businesses that are a lot healthier and with a slightly different direction. Hopefully, people will have learned, and it is a lot more vibrant. So. I see analogies in nature, and I feel this is true in life. It's true in business. Yes, failures are needed.
So what's the oldest existing business? I'm sorry, and I did not say the oldest profession. I did not say profession.
Patent lawyers. No. Oh, wait a minute, they're the same.
No, I did not say either of those. What's the oldest company we know of? Do you guys know?
What's the oldest company
we know? Think of one. Yeah, not like STP Oil or...
I want to say DuPont is pretty old.
What do you think, Sanjay?
There are a lot of companies that are 100-plus years old.
Which ones? Okay, regardless. So how have they managed to survive, and why
I want to say Alcoa, but I know it's more than 100.
Really, Alcoa aluminum?
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, well, how about some of those British companies?
Steel.
The British tea companies have been around since the 18 or 1700s.
You know, the German company's been around 120, 130 years.
So why?
Yeah.
But we're generally saying that businesses fail, and then generally, I guess in an ecosystem we expect living things, whether they be dinosaurs or birds or trees, that species go extinct.
How old is this law from?
135, 40 or something
Yeah,
years
so-
old. So the question is why? So not everything has to fail. So there must be some amount of pivoting that prevents that. And yet, what about sequoia trees? They've been around for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, but they also get consumed by fire. It's just they don't get killed by the fire. But so probably the better thing than dying because of some kind of failure is having a new death experience. Companies.
A new what? You're mumbling. Say that again. Having a new what?
Having a near-death experience.
Near-death experience.
Oh, near-death experience. That's like meeting Mark.
I think that's almost needed. It's like inoculation, right? I mean, if you get that and you survive it, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Then you absolutely, and I bet you
That was
any
Thurman
of
or
these
Nietzsche, one of
older
those two.
companies have been through many near-death experiences.
Oh.
And
Apple?
that's why they're still around.
Yeah, that's true.
Apple.
Apple.
Some of them don't make it. Polaroid, which we talked about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
many
But
times,
some-
Most of them don't.
Most of them don't. Digital equipment is, even though parts of it live on at, I guess, Dell? Who owns?
Dell's been around for a while.
Yeah, but Dell's
They're
only been
private
around.
again, right?
We're talking 30 years, 40 years,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
most.
that's nothing.
Michael Dell's our age.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone's that old, but even Sanjay's not that old.
He's
okay.
younger.
Well, okay, so we can get back to philosophical questions. So tell us about failure in business from your perspective. What you've seen, what are the causes of it, how it can be avoided? This is from a seasoned entrepreneur.
I don't know about that, but so as I said, I engaged myself a lot, at least at Erva, in sales, product development, and sales. So I saw both sides of it. The middle piece, I had some very good people that did that, But in selling, in particular, I would take every encounter, every meeting, every demo as a potential success and how amazingly big it would be, the customer, the contract. Yet that's never the case, right? I mean, you don't know. You only know after the fact that that was a royal waste of time. And so, back to the whole baseball analogy, the batting average is never 1.0, right? So, some of the sales, efforts that I launched into, in retrospect, were just so unnecessary. And I always say, why didn't I learn from it? But I think what it is that, you do get smarter. You know how to qualify the leads. You do a lot of good things, yet even with best intentions, some just do not close. And, that's just written off. That's gone. That's like electricity. You turn it on and it went. But as the main sales guy for a very, very small company, and where, again, you're not taking outside capital and you really need to grow from profits, every opportunity cost of a failed sales meeting is painful.
Well, let me ask you this,
But
related to that, Sanjay. Let me ask you this, which is that have you, in the course of your time at Erva, did you ever sort of take a flyer with respect to a sales opportunity and say to yourself, my very bones tell me this is a waste of time, and yet have it turn out to be just spectacular, a real home run? That's the question.
Oh, absolutely. Again, remember, before a priori, you have no idea how this is going to turn out. But, I did have a framework, and there's also at my website, SANJAY.com, the 3 R's. And the reason for the 3 R's is because I was having to explain to,
I think he's
subsequent
pitching.
salespeople, and I had quite a few of them, and really none of them really worked out. The 3 R's stands for revenue, reference, and resource. Resource basically means, is it already built or not? Or do we need to do special things to build it? So in a software business, if it's built, the incremental cost of, selling is close to zero. But if you have to build it, according to what the customers wanted, there is some engineering needed. But let's say it is built, so it's resourced. Now really the two remaining parameters are they going to give you a lot of money, or are they going to give you just a little bit of money, but their reference is amazing?
Right.
So let's say American Express, which was not a customer of ours, came to you and said, look, we don't have a lot of money, but we are very happy with this software product that you have. We'll give you not so much money. Will you do this for us? Now, I would typically say yes, but can we use your testimonial on our website? So in a way, I'm bartering the higher margin revenue for their stellar reference, right? So
Right.
the middle R. So that was the way I sort of came up with this framework, and it served me very well. Even so, there are times you have to tell yourself, look, they want to pay zero, yet they're called, let's say Anheuser-Busch, which wasn't the case in that case, but you take a flyer, and sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it works huge.
Okay, so can you give us any examples, not with names of companies, but maybe give us a general sense? Because let me change gears a little.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to do what you do. So sometimes
I'm
the
good at it,
failure
though.
is not planned. Sometimes it is. In other words, sometimes you look at the opportunity cost of the deal and say, you know what, this is going to have to fail because I'm not going to invest any more resource in it.
What? What?
Would you agree with that?
No, that has happened as well. So
Explain
I call
that,
it,
Mark.
How many times have I touched the prospect?
Right.
So let's say they ask me to come, and this is a very, very, very large public print-only company. They're based, they're headquartered originally in Chicago and now headquartered in New York. And if you're smart about it, you know who they are. They first came to MIT. So through the, again, ILP program, I was introduced to their CEO, CMO, and CFO, and we had a great meeting. And they said, wow, we can't stay in print forever. We need your technology. Please come to our headquarters in New York. Okay. So the first touch was at MIT. Second was at the headquarters in New York. Then there were 2 or 3 more, and I thought, okay, I understand they're a very large public company, but there's already 4 different meetings. Is something going to come of it?
Right.
And I'll tell you, that was about 10 years ago. It went on for a good 2 years, and I said, okay, it was not meant to happen. It basically went away. The salesperson I subsequently hired said, oh, I have a friend in this particular company, and he picked it up after a hiatus of 4 years, and then he ran with it for 3 years, and while I was happy to cut bait, he just would not cut bait.
But you didn't really plan the failure.
Tell some. Yeah. What about your experiences?
My
Mark?
experience? Well, I had the same. As a guy that's really a sales guy more than a product guy, you want to believe. You always believe it's going to happen. This thing's going to close. So
And by the way, that's exactly what this particular salesperson said. And I said, listen, you got to cut bait after a while, because if you keep saying I believe in this and I want to make this happen, what is happening is, and I saw this right in front of my eyes, he didn't understand the concept sunk cost.
yes,
He felt whatever he had sunk thus far cannot be recuperated cannot be recovered until it actually closed, and just kept, and by the way, if it was just maintenance level, great, that's just very little incremental cost of his time. But he'd keep doing demos to yet more people and more. I'll tell you, by the time he was done, after 3 years, he had given demos to or spoken to.
I'm going to interrupt you for Mark's sake.
no. What I was going to say was, now this is. I mean, I know the scenario. We've talked about
He's
it.
chomping at the bit here.
But when I worked at Vodafone, not name dropping and not going to disclose anything, but we had a formal discovery and qualification process that you had to follow. But where they were, two outcomes. One is they were extremely systematic about it, and they would walk from opportunities that didn't fit the scenario. So it was forced failure in a sense, which in some cases precluded them, especially in a new market, from opportunities that they could have had, revenue opportunities or learning something or finding something new and innovative. On the other hand, they also de-risked things, and if it looked risky, they just would walk. But
So wait a minute. So you're telling me they would? So they had
there was a forced
profile.
failure mode,
Yes, and the forced. But I think what you're saying is,
which
that
is what he's just saying.
Yeah, but what you're saying is that they had a profile, so that they would constantly be checking.
They tried to
this-
idiot-proof it.
every deal at every
Yeah.
stage.
That's right.
At every stage.
So you have kind of two ends of it. So what Sanjay was saying is he already figured it out intuitively, but he had a sales guy that kept pounding at it, which is what good sales. A
Right.
good sales guy just keeps going and keeps going until he
right,
gets
but that's
the deal.
all they know. But the company as a whole.
And you know, you're absolutely right, Mark. So large companies, they have to deal with lots of salespeople now. It's very regimented. Fortunately, I had the luxury of, I used to go, I grew 6 antennas, right?
Right.
So all these antennas, over time, you grow them and you just have that sense. And I knew that this was not going to close, but he didn't want to let it go.
Right.
I had let it go already once, and it came back to me. So in a smaller company, you know, it behooves the small company to have a process, but not very regimented, because I think the earlier question was,
Speak into your
were
phone
there
better.
times when you took a flyer and was, I would say the top few customers were pretty much flyers, right?
Right.
I mean, there was no opportunity cost to not taking that call. Here's an example. One Korean company, not the two main ones you know, but that made, displays, said, hey, could you come be in on this meeting? And it is with a very large beer manufacturer. And, they want a content management system and they want our screens. Well, it was all over teleconference, and this Korean gentleman who had just met at, a few days prior at a show in Las Vegas, and, there were 10 other people from this beer company. And the first question was, have you two worked together? And this gentleman, as a Korean gentleman, jumps up immediately and says, yes, of course, many times. The reality was we had never worked together.
Right.
So hold on, Sanjay. I'm going to interrupt you.
No, let me finish the story. The story is that so I was there. I talked to just the guy.
Tough guest.
What happened? They went with another display manufacturer, dropped this guy. They loved our software and basically picked us up, and we ended up being the sole provider for the content management system. That initial teleconference, when I think about how it came about, I thought I was helping the Korean dude. I had no idea that we were about to sign the largest beer company in the world at thousands of licenses. But that was, I would say, a flyer that worked out.
So let me ask you this before we get into the substance of that. Are you, for the three, we down to 2 listeners now, Mark? For the 2 listeners we have,
It's negative.
negative listeners, they're asking for their money back, and they haven't even paid. They want to make sure that you're continuing to talk clearly up to your phone. Either the network is awful, or you're moving around down there. So we need you to.
No,
you're not?
I'm just on my phone, and that's why I think. Next time we're face to face with some tequila at hand, it'll the audio quality at least will get better, and maybe we'll have more lucid thoughts.
Okay, so let me. That's all. That makes good sense. So let me ask this about the failure thing. We had a guest.
This is a classic failure. We're failing our makeup guest.
So here
is on a cell phone, so we're failing even at a
Yeah, but hold on. On a serious note, we had. So I'm
Is
thinking.
there
I
such
was
a
thinking
thing?
about our. I was thinking about our 2 guests ago. We had Susan Conover, whose theory was that she had this thing about, what is it? 85% of the things on your plate are what? Probably not worth doing right now. 15% are worth doing, and 5
Right.
need to be done by you yourself or something. There was some breakdown. And so what I'm
Lumens or something was the name of the company.
Lumina DX. Well, we can look it up.
Lumen
but
DX.
Lumen DX. So Sanjay, I guess the question is, if it turns out, and I think, notwithstanding the bad cell phone network, I think the point of that story was one of your best customers ended up coming in through a flyer. That it was a risk, or there were a lot of things that you
And
would
the guy
have.
that brought them in the deal actually didn't persist in the deal. So The one gentleman that he referred to ended up getting boxed out of the deal that he brought.
Yes, and Mark, you're saying that from what I gather, you're telling me Vodafone did. It would not. It would.
It was
it would
a
not
formal process.
A formal process that applied not only in narrowing the funnel, but it also applied once the deal was done.
Oh, absolutely. Because these are deals that would last for many years.
Right. So
and they would continually requalify.
How statistically? So the reason they could do that and Sanjay couldn't. So Sanjay was like your typical, I'll say, startup, which is within reason as long as there's not a lot of expense that he can't recoup by charging the customer. He's willing to, like a salesperson, go after everything on two legs.
But here's the thing. So, again,
and
many established companies.
Why can Vodafone avoid that? Because they're so established and they have such a big funnel?
It's established British company that had administrative processes that they followed. And they also had a belief, respectfully, that almost anybody could sell, but all we had to do is show them, here are the components. It's like my wife always says, anybody can cook or bake. All you have to do is follow a recipe.
Right.
It's the same sort of philosophy. I, by the way, do not believe that because I can't cook and I can read. Because they always say, if you can read, you can cook. No, you can't. But that was found, they figured, or they believed, let me say it that way, they believed that if we had a rigid process and that anybody followed it, that, it would result in a good outcome. I would say, kind of like Sanjay.
But you're saying that they would then cut it off. Is it? I was thinking, I had an analogy for you.
If you went through the stage gates, it's almost like product development. If you went through the stage gates and you failed at any of the milestones,
then you're out.
You're out. And they were very unemotional about it.
But Sanjay's not doing that.
Well, because Sanjay was, in that particular situation, he's an entrepreneur.
Yep.
It's an early stage company. It was, really reliant on sales and ongoing revenues for its ongoing existence. So sometimes he would take a flyer, but conversely, some guys might say that, some sales guys don't know when to call it quits. So, and what he said, which I think is very much along the recipe analogy, he had a feeling when things weren't going to go right. Sanjay did. And I would say that about chefs that have a feeling
and the way I measured that was how many times have I had to touch this deal?
Right.
Right? So if it became number 4, I've touched this 4 times, it really better be moving the ball forward. Otherwise, this is going sideways and it may never close. And by the way, I don't know, some coach said, you never really lose a game, you just run out of time. Well, for a startup, if the time is 5 years, it doesn't matter. You may be dead, right? So you can't be persisting forever. So that's the first meeting, first touch, great. I'm giving you that time, that hour, whatever. The second one, you better start talking about deal points here, right? But if we're at meeting number 4 and we're not talking deal points, I'm cutting bait and going. Whereas the sales guy, he did not have that level of discipline, thinking, well, but what about my last 3 meetings? I've already invested that much time, and sometimes I travel to this customer's location, blah, blah, blah. No, that's gone. You got to move on. But having said all of that, there were times when, you invest 1-2 meetings and still nothing happens. And I guess the one, and that is, part of the deal, right? That's part of running a business. The part that I think, in terms of, I think your initial question was sales process and deals and all that.
Right.
The part that I really tried to guard myself against were things like circumvention, sabotage, subterfuge of various sorts, and one that I would say very, very, that really hurt me a lot is partners. And, I'll give an example. We were very active in Times Square, and we came up with a way, and this was through an agency that had a client that had a billboard. And that billboard, you could send in a picture. Of course, the picture would be moderated, curated, and if it didn't have any problems with it, it would be ready for upload. and the readiness for upload or approval would be sent to you. And this is back in the day when text messaging was very, very popular. You'd get a confirmation code.
It's still popular.
If you texted the confirmation code when you were right in front of this Times Square billboard, we knew now that confirmation code would link to your original submission, and while you're standing there, it would bring up your picture for 6 seconds. So user-generated content, user-triggered content. And Erva came up with that whole process and all of that. And, we did this for, it's many, many billboards later on, mostly in Times Square for a good 5 years or so. One particular billboard operator, I won't name them, but they're fairly large, would get media buy time, so they got their money, and the brand would also pay us for the software and the capability. So, in a way, we were partners, the billboard operator and ourselves. Many years later, they decided, why do we keep bringing this little company into the deal? Is probably what they were saying to themselves. And basically, they developed that capability in-house. So we got fewer and fewer calls from this billboard company, and because they were a larger company, people would call them first for picture-to-screen, basically, capability. And that kind of, circumvention is what I think is how I think we lost majority of the deals in the latter part of my tenure there. And of course, we shifted away from that, but that could have been a very interesting piece of business, which later on became zero line item revenue-wise.
Well, this is one of those stories. This is like the TV ad where the guy or the woman is watching something on the news, and he says, "Whoa, I could have patented that, or I should have patented that." That's the only response.
Says the patent lawyer.
This is a bad exactly.
If I'd only called Nutter, McLennan, and Fish.
Yeah, the user triggeredness of it was so new that we should have patented. Why didn't we patent it? And many times I did think about it. Well, you guys charge too much or a lot, right? So I would say,
I think he means the profession does.
No,
you specifically.
The way I saw it, and maybe I'm giving up too much here. The way I saw it, I had to come up with $20K first.
It was the opportunity cost.
Right? So opportunity cost of
Did
that
I ask
20K,
for this abuse?
and really by the time we're done, $200K. And I didn't feel there was $200K worth of patenting to be done. But in retrospect, this was a truly patentable or patent-worthy,
So we've identified a secondary failure, which was failure to patent, which is David's thought, I honestly, I think it's that sometimes small companies fail because they get screwed.
Well, that's what he's getting.
Well, I mean, that was my first example was the classic case of getting screwed. And by the way, another name that I have no problems, talking about is a little company called Google.
Google,
right? I mean, they want to do the same picture to screen and all that. And we had 2 meetings, and after that, suddenly Google said, "Well, we're going in a different direction." Those exact words, right? And I thought, "Oh, okay." They lost budget. The campaign lady who was also a Google employee didn't want to do it. Whatever. No, they did do it by themselves.
So, all right. So, David originally asked you, why do things fail?
And like a good politician, Sanjay took this wherever he wanted to.
Well, he should. But hey, look, we didn't schedule him. We're not buying him any lunch or dinner or drinks. So
we'll buy him a bag of peanuts.
Well, there you go.
There we go.
But
Mark lost the one thought he had this week.
Working with very large companies
is risky.
As a small company brings some risk, and sometimes you succeed while failing. You've succeeded in getting this new product concept out to the market, but you failed because you couldn't personally, or the company couldn't monetize it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and in some ways, I almost would consider ourselves lucky because we made good hay at a time when our other parts of the network business was very weak. We made good hay from this picture-to-screen in Times Square. As I said, after 3 or 4 or 5 years, other people started just embedding that as part of their offering, some of these large billboard companies and even people like Google. And so we lost out. But at an important time point, that revenue stream helped us, gave us good brand, and so on and so forth. It's just the dynamics of, I think, the business world in that you have to know who you're going up against and what leverage you have. Remember, we're very early. So we're the only ones who could do this and had a lot of leverage.
This is pioneers are the ones with the arrows in the back.
Let me actually go back.
Correct. But again, I had no illusion
This guy
that
talks a lot.
either I need to partner heavily, patent heavily, both, or I move to a different area. And
You should run for office, Sanjay. You speak well. You should run for office. Question mark. Going back to Vodafone and the whole flyer notion. Did Vodafone have a process if there was a deal that fell outside the bounds of, in other words, it was due to be terminated? Was there a mechanism to override that? Or not really.
You couldn't do it without the mothership approving it.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Well, the only way you could get around it, you could say this deal doesn't fit all our parameters as a quote-unquote direct deal, but we'll move it through a partner or a channel.
Oh, really? And
which we have done.
And was there a way to avoid that, or pretty much not?
It was a way to,
keep it going,
de-risk the deal that the mothership thought was risky or didn't fit their parameters, and monetize it in a fashion, but you're putting the risk on a third party.
And were they pretty good about sticking with this whole program, which is, it sounds like what you're saying?
No, because when it involves human beings getting paid, and
salespeople.
And again, that's right. This is not specific to any particular telephone company based in the UK.
Of course not.
But out of Newbury, which is a town west of Reading, it's not specific to anybody that might fit that scenario. But when you have human beings that get paid, they want to find ways to get paid, and so it doesn't sit well to move it from one channel to another. You have channel conflict. But the strict answer to your question is, if opportunity A didn't fit, then you'd find another way to skin the cat if there was real money at it, and you were able to make sure that the customer's interests were served as well.
A Me Too moment for cats that get skinned?
Hopefully not.
Sanjay, did you ever...
birds.
Birds, so not birds. Parrots. Sanjay, did you
birds,
ever keep a deal going even past those 4 contact points? That is one you said yourself, I just think I've got to keep going with this because it has a chance, and actually had it succeed, or were you pretty good about enforcing that sort of 4 touch point rule?
I was fairly good about enforcing that, and the only way I would do it is if it was just hi, hello by email. I would not visit the customer again, because that now became real cost, both in time and money. But just to keep them warm, say hello. How are you? If they say hello and all that, of course you want to be friendly and say hello. But enough time passes that even they have moved on or something else is changed. So it's, I think, a very good rule, and again, it served me well. But the failure to close deals, that happened often. In fact, I had a whole folder. I mean, the way I organized my life was every customer got a folder, and the folder of active customers was much smaller than another super folder called defunct. And under that was
Mark was at the beginning of that folder? Mark's name was
my picture was on it.
Yeah.
Customers and some names and defunct and many, many, many more names.
Hey, so here's
called a funnel.
Let's go back to the top of this.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the top of this, Sanjay. You're saying that you treat failure like baseball, which is the failure for a...
He says it's an organic thing. I can't do sports analogies, but it says failure is organic, like a forest fire.
So he'll argue it doesn't really exist, or that is, there's no negative connotation. It's simply like a batter. I think 400 average would be phenomenal.
I think the negative connotation is failure to manage failure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't learn from your failure, then that's kind of dumb.
So do you think
failure does happen?
Are there any failures that are bad, Sanjay? Are there any bad failures, or is your thought that all failure is natural and is part of the baseball game of business life?
You like these baseball
games? I think if you learn nothing from the failure and you basically replicated this exact same failure mechanism again, that's
failure.
Dumb.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true failure. But you
Like
will
this
not close
podcast.
every deal. So there is going to be some
And the
failure,
listeners.
and you just have to accept it. And you won't know it a
that's
priori
interesting.
which ones will be a failure, and thus you work towards all of them as if they're going to be.
So what would your reaction be as a serial entrepreneur to getting into a business that failed? Is your reaction, as long as I don't repeat that again, that's just part of life? I had a few good exits and I've got a bad one. That's statistically acceptable and normal, and I'm just moving on.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said, it's a little bit corny. Say, are you having fun? If you're having fun, I think, you just take the pluses and minuses and move on. And this is true within a company, looking at deals. It's, across companies, looking at a portfolio of companies. And, I've had, at one point, if you want to think about a true failure for a company. I at one point, for whatever reason, thought Nepalese handmade paper is very amazing, and we should import that into the U.S. Fortunately, I did this on the side; it wasn't the main thing. But boy, very quickly I realized the margins in handmade paper is so thin, even though it's handmade and all
So is
that.
the paper.
It is not art, right? I mean, I saw Thai paper look like handmade paper, but it was machine made, and you're taking the cleaners, right? And I thought, okay, this is not sustainable. This is not going to work. So I was left with boxes and boxes of stuff that were imported from Nepal, and that was a very, harsh lesson that, if you don't do enough diligence in where you're going to go, you are going to fail.
So wait a minute, was
So
that a
you have-
failure? Was that a failure that you regret, or was a bad one, or was it just a natural one? And
No, in a way, that's one I learned a lot from. Remember, I said I grow many antennas, and that one, I'll tell you, this is one of the things we did, and this is, with my brothers, and that's very sort of a side thing for us. But yet, I know you can make it work. But we start advertising for this sort of stuff before we knew who our customers were. Imagine not understanding your customers' needs and where they, in those days, magazines and all that, which magazines they read. You're pissing money into the wind, right, if you don't know what you're doing. And all of these were very valuable for the future businesses I ran. And so in a way, it was a very, very, cheap, expendable business course I took, running a very quick burn, importing business.
So, Mark, is this the new Zen? Is this the new philosophy, which is, and I'm not sure if it's even new, which is as long as you learn, it wasn't a failure?
I don't know if it's the new Zen. I like the forest fire analogy, which is, acknowledge that failure is organic and it's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Just don't fail too often and too big.
And Sanjay would argue you don't fail the same way.
Well, all right. So too often.
Yeah. So where does running out of? I still argue that running out of money is sort of a symptom of failing to acknowledge that these other things either simply happen or.
But you can't, as we learned in last season with some of the entrepreneurs, sometimes you can't control the money end of it.
Yeah.
Just even with my original business, AirPrint, just how was I going to know that the housing crisis was going to impact everything and have that big recession that we had?
Well, how about Sanjay? He hasn't addressed that. He hasn't addressed that. But
he hasn't had a failure like that.
Yeah, that's true. So, Sanjay, you know what we're getting at, which is we're still trying to, over the course of way too many podcasts, and perhaps one was way too many, but we're still trying to get to the heart of failure. And the initial theory was that companies fail when they run out of money, and that to me was more like arguing that people die when they stop breathing. It's true, but it's not sort of the heart of the cause. And
So I think I have a theory there that I can absolutely prove, and I'm sure some mathematicians can prove. If you make money every month, you'll never run out of money.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So
If you draw a breath and exhale every day,
you
with
won't
some
die.
frequency, you'll keep breathing.
Right.
What's your point?
So again, someone like me, again, the way I did, Erva were very, very intentional. I I joined a startup after having run, tech funds and so forth in London. I just wanted to be in the startup scene. I came from that world. I brought internet Nepal. That was very, enriching and all. And then suddenly here I am, an investor. I wanted to be running companies, and yet, the one that I joined, I followed. The CEO was a really, really charming guy, good salesperson. But just, I followed the wrong person. And then
That wasn't one of Mark's
cliff.
companies, I trust.
Yeah, we went over the cliff, did not, list on London Stock Exchange. Literally, the bankers, called it and said, look, we this is the wrong time because it was year 2000 April. And myself, having come from finance and technology, I've been telling the same CEO, please, we got to go public sooner. And his view was, no, we need to amass more people. And then if we had the 300 people in a few more quarters, then it would be worth $2 billion. Well, we never got to see that, right? So that lesson was very, very, a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
And that was, immediately after that, whenever, I founded Erva, I said, I'm not going to have a co-founder. So that, if I make my mistakes, I will be responsible, and I will not raise outside capital. This person raised insane amounts of money, and I think when you have too much money, for instance, I'm sure all of you know, and your listeners know where Piccadilly Circus is in London. It's bang in the middle of town. For a software company, there was no need to be there. Yet we had very expensive, offices.
You had a palace.
And it took. And it took 3 months to, remodel it. The day it was done, I walked in and thought, holy cow, we're in a nightclub, the lights and everything. And I thought, I think we'll pay dearly for this, splurging of investors' capital. And we did, right? We just, the guy basically spent a lot of the VC money in the wrong way.
I had one of those,
too. At
too.
Erva, I said, I'm not going to raise any money at all and see if I can do customer funding. And that's why when you're doing customer funding, you kind of need to make money pretty much every month.
That's right.
So with that, I think I hear the closing music. So Sanjay, we are going to pick this discussion up again over tequila. And Mark is going to bring us to a close with our friend
Aaron
Aaron Copeland.
Sanjay, thank you. I'm not supposed to interview people or act like I'm a radio host.
Yeah, and I'm not supposed to say anything.
Or do time and weather or any of those things. But I do want to say thank you for being willing to do this with zero notice.
Zero preparation.
And good humor.
And I still have some time to go play squash. It was at 5 o'clock, so thank you for making this short.
Yeah.
And this was fun.
Short but not sweet. Yeah, it was good. Thank you, Sanjay.
We'll talk to you later.
We'll talk to you. Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.
Sanjay.
Bye-bye.